You're one of the people who thinks that Muzzy's the best player in the world.
He can't win another tour stop, can he?
Yeah, he absolutely can.
No,
he can win loads more tour stops.
He can't win another. That would be absurd.
He is absurd. He just wins everything he does right now. And again, last year we were warned to keep an eye on him. We were like, yeah, thanks, Zyrez. Shut up. He was quite right on this one.
We were last year. Hearthstone Global Games was the first time I'd ever seen Hunter race, actually.
Yeah, and we were told he was a little bit of a... played a bit too quick
we
and
were
that sort of stuff.
That, yeah.
He doesn't do that anymore. He's an incredibly thoughtful player, and we've seen lots and lots of discussions about various plays that he makes.
All right, getting into the game, though. Wild Growth, Ultimate Infestation in hand. Hatul just missing a Nourish, and he's good to go.
Yep, he's in a decent spot. But these hands can... That's the thing with Druid. It does whiff occasionally, but in general, it just develops. You have always played from the top of your deck in Druid, and it's always looked like, they need this card. It just comes, you've got branching paths to draw cards if you have to. The versatility of that card is the hidden gem in this deck. The way you can force different wins out. The other thing here that's going to be interesting is because, like, the Dusky Boys and Norway, in particular, some of the best Malygos players in the world, but they're playing against Glacier, who is in that same category. So they'll be able to make high-level plays based on what's going to happen against it. It's not just like, let's outplay our opponent. As we see Denmark taking a 1-0 lead against Argentina.
Team Hoy and Hoy.
Hoy and Crane. All there from last year. Actually, no, Hoy was there last year and Crane, but that's it. Right, Wild Growth on 2. It's going to be another Wild Growth that came off the top, by the way. Next
something is curious to me about Israel's deck list here. Okay, you know that players started adding Starfire to the list at one point. Am I right in thinking that the most common card to cut for the Starfire was Faceless Manipulator?
I think so, yeah.
Israel are playing both.
Okay.
Which makes it pretty greedy.
It is a bit... How often do you actually see the Faceless win the game?
No, not very often.
Because, I mean, going back a month, it was just like, I'll kill you with my Faceless Twig combo. But I find these days that with everyone playing weapon removal against Malygos now, you don't get the Faceless nonsense going on so often, which is why some people cut it. But like you say, Israel covering all bases and playing both here.
But something that is also worth talking about when it comes to the Malygos Druid is that Faceless isn't only used to win the game. It's used to copy the minions their opponents played and then naturalize their opponent's minions so that it's just yours now. It's used to copy a Lich King for several Death Knight cards, which, you know, themselves can in fact win the game. So Faceless Manipulator does have other uses as well. It's difficult to work out exactly what they've cut on the fly like this, but they're also still running Alexstrasza, still running the Lich King, still running Ultimate Infestation. No Tyrantus, which we've seen some of the players running.
Yeah, I think that is in some of the decks we're going to see later today. And the chip damage in this deck is getting more and more important. We've seen a lot of situations. We saw it with Hunter Race last week when they beat the Mage. Yeah, they beat the Mage. Forcing through a damage here and a damage there suddenly takes the pressure off your Malygos to win on its own. And so if you can get some sort of board and just chip away for bits and pieces, counting is far more important than normal with this deck. And more important than you'd expect with it being viewed as a combo deck.
Something I'd like to point out here, as again, we have Hunter Race, arguably the best Hearthstone player in the world playing right now. He is going to have some pretty big reads on Hatul's hand due to the fact that Hatul just played Branching Paths and Armored Up twice.
Sure.
Like, that is not an ordinary play for turn 5. He can deduce a few things from that. One is that there's Ultimate Infestation ready to go, because that's the only reason that they wouldn't want the card draw here. And two, there's a Spellstone in the hand worthy of an upgrade.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a fair estimation. Obviously, if they possibly can play against this deck, you want as much armor as possible, but you would like to get it after you've got rid of an opposing board, so you keep that armor. That way that Alexstrasza is a little bit sort of negated from you. Obviously, with the Druid deck, if you can buy some time against the Priest, then that is everything, because you do have quite a lot of damage you can set up, and if you've got more time to set it up, you're good. Obviously, they know about the Ooze, so they can't rely on the Twigs. They are going to have to try and get bored at some point to get some damage sneaking through.
The reason I wanted to point all of that out immediately, though, was because Hunter Race had a decision to make with his Shadow Visions, and just the fact that he probably known there's an Ultimate Infestation in hand will have affected the choice that he made. No extra Mind Blast, though, which is a slight issue following all of that armor gain. As you were saying, more armor against Control Priest, the better.
But
however, Hunter Race is able to just start hitting the face with this Twilight Drake now.
yeah, and from his side, obviously he knows he can deal with Twig. He has the ooze in his hand. He knows this because that's how having your own hand works. And taking the Divine Hymn means it's going to be very difficult for that chip damage I've been talking about to exist. And which means they can just attempt to run Israel out of stuff entirely.
Coin and Innovate and Malagos in hand. So the problem is Hatul is probably going to have to play one of these 0 mana cards to set up for the Ultimate Infestation. However, having 2 mana cards in the hand after a Malagos gets played can be the difference between casting a Death and Decay along with the Malagos and not.
Okay.
So Malagos, Coin, Innovate, Death and Decay is an option if he has both of these mana.
I mean, spreading Plague into Spellstone the Acolyte doesn't look great, but
no.
It's a way of dumping the Spreading Plague. Do you ever get a better one? Just going for the Malagos now.
I mean, how does
Glazer
Norway deal with this?
Glazer's face is like, let's just do this. I don't know if it's right or not. Sometimes you hear the pros say, like, I don't know if it's right, but it looks good to me, it feels right, let's do it.
The only way of getting rid of this is Psychic Scream, and that only puts it back in the deck, so Hatul's no further behind than he was before. Dropping Malagos last turn was a very nice play. Obviously, the Twilight Acolyte Kibar Shadow Priest combo is a thing, but not until turn 9.
This goes back a little bit to what I say, look at Hunter Ace's face here, to what I was saying about them knowing each other.
Okay.
Like, if anyone else does this, you know they've got a handful of damage, most likely. But Hunter Ace knows that Glaze is capable of doing this just for board presence and maybe some extra damage here and there.
I wouldn't like to talk about what Glaze is capable of, especially if I was Hunter Ace.
He's a very quiet one. So Psychic Screaming, as you pointed out, puts it back in the deck. Hunter Ace will almost certainly have the read that that was a weird play, so Ultimate Infestation could well be on the way. It wasn't a bad play at all, but...
So I guess the question Hunter Ace has to ask himself is, how much damage can that Malagos really do? Can I out-heal it? Can I afford to leave this up and deal with it over the next 2 turns at some point? Maybe even Twilight Acolyte Kibar Shadow Priest it on turn 9. The answer is, no, I cannot afford to do that. We're talking potentials of swipes, Starfires, Ultimate Infestations, Moonfires, etc. It's just not worth the risk, and he, I think, correctly shuffled it back into the deck, and now Hatul's just going to draw it again.
And that's just a win for Israel. Not the game, but the situation. Yep. That's one of the small sort of battles has been fought, and Israel have managed to get board presence out of it. They've managed to get one of those Psychic Screams basically doing nothing, because they're in no hurry to kill the priest, although killing them with this lot would be nice. And now look at the reload that Israel have generated.
Israel are playing a really nice pressure game here. Norway going to struggle to deal with these minions, even if he had Shadow Reaper Anduin, Hunter Ace could only deal with the 5/5. Cards like Holy Fire, which kind of need to go to the face, especially if Israel are gaining more and more armor, aren't any good. Again, it's a perfect illustration of why Malagos Druid is such a strong deck. It doesn't just win off of the Malagos win condition. That's not how this deck works. The deck has lots of different ways of putting things on the board very quickly, spreading Plagues plus Tyrant, Ultimate Infestation plus Tyrant, dealing damage to the face with Ultimate Infestation first. Lich Kings, Alexstrasza's, it's not just Malagos, that's not the only win condition.
Awkward looking clear here for Norway, but lobbing a Primordial Drake in the way was very weak to naturalise. It would have resulted in a burned card. But this works, it gets the job done, and as always with Psychic Scream, of course Malagos just reappears. This time, like you say, though, the way of dealing with it is there. They've managed to survive those extra 2 turns they needed to. That's why the screen was so important.
Yeah, well, exactly. This turn, Hatul can't exactly just drop Malagos because then it gets stolen. And then, although Hatul can still win the game, it's... well, he can't deal with Hunter Ace's Malagos at that point. That's the issue.
And the onus is on Israel to get this done. They've bought themselves the time, but the other clock that is ticking is that number on the right-hand side of your screen, 17 versus 14. If Israel run out of threats when that number runs out, they will lose the game just because they will lose in fatigue. Or at least because of fatigue. A lot of damage between now and then, though. It's up to Israel to make sure they time it well. Yeah, this is a lot of armor. Important they play the Twig as soon as possible. It's possible that your opponents don't have the ooze, but
62 total health.
that's a lot. That's a big number of health.
And it's the reason that the priest is never just gonna deal with the druid with its sort of natural win condition. The priest has to get stuff on the board and be using that hero power. Hatul sort of has to not play stuff on the board because he doesn't want his stuff stolen and then played against him.
Priest kind of has 18 armor. If this goes all the way, they've got that divine him plus the other 2 in the deck.
Yeah.
So they have some coming up. So it's not quite as lopsided as the numbers on the screen make it look, but yeah.
It's not. However, Malygos is easily capable of dealing that much damage in one turn. It's not armor that's sort of there as a safety net. It's armor that Hunter Ace actually has to cast, spend mana crystals on, and opt to increase his health by.
Another thing he won't want to take is a spreading plague and branching path to the face. That's a way that Israel can sneakily get some damage.
Bye-bye ooze. Hatul and Team Israel will have known that was coming. There was no way this weapon was not getting oozed within the next 5 turns.
Yeah, and interesting that Norway decided, well, it's not interesting, it's fairly obvious, they decided not to do it immediately. And now, how would you deal with an Alexstrasza if it was just played right now?
You'd play Twilight Acolyte, Cabal Shadow Priest, and hope there's no lethal on the other side. And again, usually there isn't. Malygos struggles to deal more than 15 damage, or rather more than 12 damage in one turn. I mean, as we can see, Hatul could fit in the hero power here, but we're still only talking 13 damage. That's not quite 16 yet.
Both sides wondering where their Death Knight is. Have we said that before about any Hearthstone game?
No.
No. Obviously, if you start hitting your opponent in the face first, that's going to help a lot, and Death Knights do that really well.
Time waits for no one.
Interesting, when the rope started burning, everybody on the Israel team started to go quiet and leave it to Kaiser.
It gets to the point where it's like, yeah, okay, we could play around the Cabal Shadow Priest, we could play around the Twilight Acolyte, but we just never win the game if we play it that way. So they're going to go for it. They're going to be... Does Hunter Ace even steal this? Maybe it's better to save those cards for the Malygos later and actually Holy Fire and trade the 3/5.
I prefer the Holy Fire play.
Yeah, trade the 3/3 rather.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but I didn't like to pull you up on. Oh, just give away a couple of points of stats amongst friends from this highly technical matchup. But what do you do with the rest of your turn?
Does it matter too much?
It doesn't matter a lot. I think what Norway are trying to achieve is to keep a handful of cheap stuff so they get more pings from Anduin, but they're trying to keep on 7 cards so that a single naturalize doesn't hurt them. And some point they're going to get to the point where double naturalize hurts them, so only keeping 1 minion about might be a big deal as well.
The issue is with the play that I described earlier, the stealing the Alexstrasza play, to anyone wondering, is that as far as Hunter Ace is concerned, this Alexstrasza only comes down if Hatul has something to follow it up with. So the fact that Malygos is in hand has got to be under their consideration. There's no other way of dealing with the Malygos. However, they've gone for it anyway. I guess, actually, no, with the minions on the board, they can deal with Malygos.
Right.
But Malygos can deal with the minions rather than dealing face damage this turn. So we could see Malygos naturalize Moonfire a minion, Moonfire another minion.
Primordial Drake also deals quite well with an opposing plague, should it come down.
Yeah.
It leaves you some things on board, and you get to Primordial Drake Divine him to get all your things healed up.
Right.
And so that's another card, because that is another card that could threaten later on to get some damage through.
Okay, so this is wasting a lot of damage, but yeah. Israel could drop Malygos, naturalize the Alexstrasza, Moonfire the 4/5 and the 8/4, leaving just the 2/3 attack minions on the board. From what we can see in Hunter Ace's hand, he then can't deal with the Malygos, and then from next turn, it can be Faceless, Coin, Starfire, and then he can start dealing loads of damage.
Israel do know, though, that Hunter Ace wouldn't make that play if he can't deal with the Malygos.
Sure.
Or at least if he doesn't think he can deal with Malygos.
That's the thing, right? If you're planning on dealing with the Malygos with these minions, Israel can get rid of most of them.
Second Divine Hymn. Lots of damage firing in from all directions here. Hunter Ace's ability to go low on health and not panic is something that has seen him win these tour stop semi-finals and finals a lot of the time.
Well, this is where what you said earlier really comes into the game, right? Like, Hunter Ace's health is a lot higher than it looks right now. Holy Fire, double Divine Hymn in hand, and Hero Power to play every single turn. He's going to get himself right out of range.
And these minions are all going to come back to life.
Yeah.
None of them die to the Malygos. Well, one of them dies to the Malygos, but they don't have to. Heal them back up as well as yourself. The Malygos is gone for good. You've got a board, and suddenly everything is looking hunky-dory.
So I think the problem with the play I described before is that it wasn't a game-winning play. That was, okay, I put Malygos down, maybe he can't deal with it. The play that Israel went for is, okay, this just wins the game if Hunter Ace can't deal with it, and if he can't heal himself. Like, he has to deal with it and heal himself in order to then survive. Unfortunately for Hatul, Hunter Ace was able to do both, and now things are looking bad for Israel.
And the problem they had was, first of all, I mean, they had a good idea that Hunter Ace would have a way of dealing with it.
Right.
Let's face it, but it's not going to get better if you wait. You spend that time thinking about, okay, how do we deal with this board and set up a Malygos later? What? And then you look at your hand and you look at what's going on and you're like, we don't? Let's just get this damage down now and hope it's a bluff. Because at this level, obviously, Hunter Ace might make that play knowing that Israel know, and therefore maybe it's a bluff. But sort of final push here, it's spreading plague onto its friend, the party helper, the leader of the band.
The guy with the boom bots, right?
The guy with the boom box, not the guy with the boom bot. He's coming next month.
My apologies.
Time waits for no one.
Got confused again. Now having to just make the widest board possible. But now a Psychic Scream would just end the game.
I mean, Israel have to go all in. They have, again, the Psychic Scream will turn up. And if you're Psychic Scream here, there is a chance you're winning Fatigue as well.
Okay.
No, I don't think you do, but it changes the equation again. At the moment, the equation is that if Israel do not kill Norway, Norway just win. The Death Knight's an issue here. Whoever draws out first will still get some advantage. But as it stands, it looks like Norway have cleared up a giant percentage of the issues here. Shadow Visions and Divine Hymns are going to come together here to create all sorts of silly.
I just wonder which one Hunter Ace is going to want to go for here. Shuffling all of these useless minions into Israel's deck.
But shuffling other minions in later might be a thing. No, he just wants to
draw more cards. Get to his Anduin faster.
Ordering of the Divine Hymn was a thing here. Just to see how that worked out. Did he get them all in? He did.
Of course.
Obviously, Branching Pass was on their mind there.
He's Hunter Ace. Of course he got them all in. Uh-oh. So now Israel can just trade both of those into the Cabal Shadow Priest and play 4 more Spreading Plagues. If he drops the Lich King this turn, it does just get destroyed. But unfortunately, I think we've reached the stage in the game where, regardless of which turn the Lich King comes down, it will definitely be destroyed immediately, every time.
Yeah, it seems likely, doesn't it? Although, Israel have the right to believe that Hunter Ace has got through a decent amount of his removal here. I just get the impression Hunter Ace is not even talking about the game at this moment. He's back on it now. I think there's a moment of them being happy about how their plays have worked out.
Again.
1, 2, 3. He's counting how many tour stops he's reached the final in. Look at this. 5 next week. Yeah, we got you, Hunter Ace.
Time waits for no one.
Team Norway believed that they played almost perfect Hearthstone last week, with the only play they're not certain about being the one that Sottle pointed out
right.
to show earlier this week. They weren't sure that it was correct to UI the face rather than the minion. But otherwise, they said perfect Hearthstone last week. You can't win them all, but they don't plan on being another one for long.
And I'm sure Zorkthar used those exact pretty words. Zorkthar, not the most tactful when he feels that something went against him sometimes. He is just like basically a Boom Project guy. He's just insane, mad scientist. Take all these players, stir them together, see what comes out. And he's been very successful. Look at how Nordavind have been going. Look at this match that's in progress now.
I mean, I'm a little bit concerned. Someone's actually filled our vials here at the studio with some sort of mysterious
I
liquid.
think that was subtle.
I'm sure I saw Raven drinking some earlier.
That would explain a lot. Slowly but surely, just running Israel out of things. And this all stems back to the ooze in the deck. Right the way back there, I've been critical of tech cards in decks in this format, but this has worked out great. Even the presence of the ooze in the deck meant that Israel had to go for things earlier than they would like to have. They couldn't just tootle along, sort of hitting face with the twig. They had to preemptively expect the twig not to do its thing.
Lorinda, Tootle.
Yes, it's a train station.
I wonder.
Okay, where?
It's somewhere near Pudding.
Pudding?
Yeah, I think so. I'll have a double thanks. 2 slices. Israel now reduced to using their damage spells as removal. And that's always a bad sign with any deck that's trying to deal damage. Their last bastion of hope is just to get the Lich King to stick around, but how? From where they're sat, maybe the Acolyte Cabal isn't in hand. But
Players having to branch it out just to allow for the trades here. This is their best hope, yeah, of getting that Lich King down and getting it to stick next turn.
they've seen the Divine Hymns used as well, so they have the right to believe they have some sort of health advantage, I guess, but obviously Alex Straza kind of tidies that up.
Best case scenario is like Norway heals up the Cabal Shadow Priest, trades it in. Next turn, Israel drops the Lich King, hero powers down the Cabal Shadow Priest, and innovates out the Spellstone to deal with whatever else Norway play. But that's it. That's best case scenario for Israel. But as we can see, there is the second Twilight Acolyte and the second Cabal Shadow Priest in Hunter Ace's hand, ready to go.
Just the little things that they do, Norway. I think this hand size has been almost precisely 7 for almost the entire game, which is the most cards you can keep without Naturalize over sort of drawing you one.
Right.
So you're keeping back as many options as possible without it being a disaster. Just these bits and pieces, things we haven't been able to highlight while we're trying to analyse the game at the same time.
Yep.
All these little bits are all factored into every play they're making.
I must consider.
And Norway aboard. They just win the game.
Norway aboard. Time to kill Israel.
I'll tell you what, this Alex Straza does a pretty good job of preventing the Lich King from sticking.
It does.
First thing Hassel did then is check the spells.
Yeah, how many more armors do I need to make this into a card that works with swipe?
And the answer is too many for your hero power this turn. I don't think it's actually been I don't think there's even been 1 armor since that was drawn. I think that's a 3.
I know he's winning at the moment, but Hunter Ace is finally starting to look comfortable on camera.
Yeah.
Because even in Italy, when he's already come 2 second places and 1 tour stop win, he was still kind of nervous before the final and still looked a little bit edgy on camera to me.
Yeah.
He's finally starting to accept I might be quite good and people don't judge me too harshly. It's taken longer than you'd expect.
People actually think I'm quite good at Hearthstone now.
You are, Dan.
Not me. Not me. Nobody thinks I'm good at Hearthstone. My mum does.
Yeah? Does she play?
Time waits for no one.
Cool. Alright, Lich King, last gasp. Can Israel not only defend but also find something superb? I don't know what something superb would even be here. Frostmourne, maybe? Just for some more damage?
Doompact's not the best one at all. This game is just like Doompact is okay in fatigue, but this game just never gets to fatigue. As Hunter Ace doesn't just deal with the Lich King, just takes it for his own. He's taken Malagos, he's taken, or rather he took Alex Straza earlier, he's now taken the Lich King. Now he's got the Frostmourne, and that's the exceptional Death Knight card you mentioned before. This game is looking like it's dramatically reaching its conclusion.
Yeah, trying to find any way they can stay in this. And I think what normally happens here is you nourish in case you've done something silly and forgotten an important card, and then you concede.
What to do?
Glazer's trying to figure out a way where they can still win. What have they got left? They've got Branching Paths, which is 12 armor. They've got Malfurion, presumably. There are Death Knights in these decks, right?
Who even knows anymore, Lorinda? Who even knows?
I'm almost out of cards.
time to check.
I'm pretty sure there is.
I was assuming there was. Yep, there it is.
Yep, definitely Malfurion in this
Always
deck.
terrifying as a caster
No.
when the card you've been talking about for half an hour
Now,
is
how
the
about
bottom
Andrew?
card.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
2015 Hearthstone. No Death Knights.
Whoa. Game? Hello? Lich King? Death Knights?
Yeah, they're in there.
Heroes? Dr. Boom? Please? Something happen?
Dr. Boom. Everybody's ready for the return of Dr. Boom. And his mini-bots. Well, we're looking at this and we're looking at each other thinking, please kill him.
6 damage on board, 2 Mind Blasts in hand, that's 16. Frostmourne is another 5. And Norway should really struggle to lose this game. What they're trying to do is work out that one little percentage point.
And you saw it there, they went to heal the Shadow Priest to protect it from swipe, and they're not sure if the 2 to their own face or protecting the
Right.
Shadow Priest is the best way to never ever lose.
But this Frostmourne sets up the 2-turn lethal nicely. If that swings into the face once, then that, the board or the weapon with the Mind Blast will be finishing the game next turn. What could they possibly be thinking about?
The Dr. Boom card could be something, maybe an opposing Frostmourne with a swipe still in hand, a UI still in hand.
You realise you just said the Dr. Boom, right?
Did I say the Dr. Boom? Dr. Doom Pact? I don't know. There's Malfurion. Israel, infestation, their own face for so much damage it's going to kill them. And 2-0 to Norway.
Yeah, not a good start for Israel at all. Already 0-1 in the Hearthstone Global Games twist. Mason said to me earlier today, he's looked at the deck list, he believes that they are favoured